in our agenda, we're going to go through like mainly, I think I mentioned in the first part that it is mainly about the survey and how to fill in the survey as well. We can't iterate enough that it's like this all depends on the quality of the data that you put in. It is about, you're really, really celebrating your successes, celebrating your impacts that you've had and the things that you're most proud of as an organization. So we're going to go through the organizational profile, which actually the great thing about this is that this only really needs to be filled out once. Then we're going to go through like your outcomes and how you, I suppose, show your impact vis-a-vis the outcomes, the 14 outcomes that we set out. We're going to go through the indicators, and then we'll go through what that looks like then in the impact tool itself. Brilliant. And it's literally an instant thing that happens, which is quite exciting. So I'm going to pass you over so that's just a little bit about the login. As I said, really, really easy. And I'll be showing you directly the tool and how it works, which Rudy shared with you just earlier on. But yeah, so when you go into the tool itself, you'll have, as Rudy showed you, there's three options. So the first one obviously is where you see all of the results of all of your impact, and where he showed you where you can change like the way that you see things, whether by participant or total hours, etc. There's the survey, and then there's the supporting info. So both really, really important. We would advise maybe to kind of go into the supporting info first, just to familiarize yourself as well on on the theory of impact if you haven't done so already. Our group of advisory group, so big shout out again for them. They've seen this, may have seen this before, but they have already kind of filled in some of this data. But yeah, definitely the supporting info is a good place to start. So then when you go into the survey part of it, so just to go back again there, so yeah, supporting info there for just information. You can find information on indicators, etc. But then you click on the survey part, which is the one in the middle, and you'll come to two different tabs. One is the organization and one is the outcomes. So the organization tab, Elaine is going to go through now. And this is the one that I said you only really have to fill this out once. And this allows for when like it may be that different people in your organization are filling out the survey, so you can, it doesn't have to be that one person. So maybe the first person is the one who fills out the organizational profile, and then after that people can come in. It also saves maybe if there's like people changing roles, or like people have moved on as well, that all of that data is there already. Great. So let's start on the survey. So I'm going to pass you over to Elaine now, just on the organizational profile. And Elaine, just give us a nod now when you're ready to.
Yeah. Oh, good. Thanks a million, Lizzie. So yeah, as Lizzie said, this only needs to be done once, which is great. And I suppose the rationale for gathering information about an organizational profile is that in IDEA, we do gather this information in different ways, sometimes through our annual member survey and sometimes through a survey that we do after the grants. So the Irish Aid grants, we survey members who apply for the grants, and then we do gather some information on their profile when it comes to GCE. So now we're kind of going to do it in one place, which we do think will be quite useful. So when you go in, you'll be prompted, first of all, to just search for your organization. So all IDEA members, organizational members will be there. If you're missing, or if there's an issue or you're misnamed or something like that, you can let us know, but everybody should be there already. So we can go to the next slide, Lizzie, thanks. And basically, you'll need to have some details to hand. And I would say this is really important for all of the theory of impact too. Like, gather the information that you need beforehand, and then it should be quite quick to fill in the survey. And then you'll have also this training and this recording that you can listen back to for particular sections. But for the organizational profile, you'll need to have the following. you'll need to know the annual budget in your organization for development education or global citizenship education across all donors, okay? Or, the organization's own income. So the actual full budget spend for GCE. You'll need to know the number of staff in the organization and full-time equivalent. By that, we mean you calculate based on a full-time role. So for instance, in IDEA, I work 3.5 days per week. That's 70% of a full-time role. So you calculate the number of staff based on that. And then the percentage of time that staff spend on development education or global citizenship education. The other thing then, I'll come to the last one first, which is the sectors of education your organization is active in. So we have a list there, there are things like early years, primary, post-primary, higher education, adult education, further education, youth work, initial teacher education. So there's a list of sectors there and you can choose as many as you like. And then finally, the GCE programs of your organization. This is really important, and we will come to this throughout the survey, but you're basically going to be reporting on activities within certain programs of work. And a program is really just a set of activities or a group of activities. But I suppose the programs are where we want to gather the results of work. An activity like a one-off workshop or an event or a resource can all happen within a program, but the results really should be happening at the level of a program rather than an activity in particular. Okay. So you'll see there, that's kind of just what I've talked you through. That, under the organizational profile, this is a screenshot here of the different educational sectors, the salaried staff members, the percentage of time that's dedicated to development education work. And that can take a bit of figuring out. And sometimes it is a bit of a ballpark figure. You mightn't know it for sure. But hopefully, if you ask somebody, who's a senior leader in the organization or maybe works in finances, or if you're big enough to have maybe a HR person, they can maybe help you to calculate that. As we said, you only need to do it once. So it's really important, I suppose, that we're as accurate as possible. Then the organization programs is here. So as I said, a program is an ongoing body of GCE work run by your organization. For example, a global youth program, a transition year module, a teacher training program. In IDEA, we would say the Code of Good Practice is a program that we work that we run, and the theory of impact will be one as well. So we're just going to invite people to add an example maybe of a GCE program from your organization. So let's kind of hear the types of organizations and the types of programs that you run. And like some of the common ones in Ireland would be the Concerned Debates Programme. I'm sure lots of people are familiar with that. And Eco-UNESCO Young Environmentalist Awards might be another. So we'll just give you a minute just to try to, pinpoint a programme in your organisation and to add it to the chat. And if you can maybe add your organisation's name as well, that would be good. Thanks, Anita. The Concerns Transition Year Academy, volunteer programme in Trócaire, Education for Sustainability, climate literacy, great Worldwide Global Passport, great Trócaire Game Changers, brilliant. So lots of them coming in there. So, just try and, I suppose, quantify how many separate or distinct programs that you run. And sometimes activities, can be spread across more than one program, but it's good to kind of think about that and maybe agree it if you have colleagues or a team, agree it in terms of how you're going to capture it in the tool. I think we can move on, but feel free to keep adding those examples. So I'm going to hand over to Lizzie now, because now we're going to move on to the outcomes part of the survey, which is very crucial, but this also includes details on your activities. And as I said, if anyone was or most of you were at the launch, the details in the activities is really vital as well, because we want to be able to verify I suppose, the results that we're showing and the impact that we're showing as well.
Great. So, like Elaine explained, for the organizational profile, you will need some things at hand. But I think we got across in the launch that really we have all this information, and we all have so much data from, various annual reports and results frameworks, etc. So we have that all already. But I guess, just leading on from the programs, it is really important to fill in that sector. Now, there is an option that you can add a program, but the more, I suppose, uniform that we keep it, the greater impact we can show. But I guess the name of the activity and the program that it's linked to is what you'll need. So there's thank you so much for the brilliant programs that what you put in. The duration and the time frame of the dates. And this is what I really like about this. And I guess this was as a result of working with an advisory group and a very robust advisory group, is that we took into consideration either like, you know, it could have taken place within a month, so that's okay. So it's not bound to a certain year. So it could have been a program that took place, say, if you're in the formal sector between September and October, say, in the first term. So you're able to kind of really, really calculate that as well. And then accumulatively, we can see from a year or from a school year what's happening. Your target group and optional demographic information. So if you've collected, say, data on like, you know, breakdown of gender and age, etc., you have an option of putting that in as well. Again, that can throw out more results as well for us as a sector to be able to see. If you can, and this more than likely comes from your results framework, would be like a baseline, a target, and a result for that particular activity. So say if you do, let's say that the TY program from Concern, which was put in the chat there, I'm just pulling that one out. So you had maybe 20 students in the last kind of year, and that was like kind of your baseline, and then your target this year is for kind of 30. But you only maybe have got 25. So that's like, you know, an example of kind of 3 different numbers that you're putting in as well. But you'll definitely have that information at hand. And then you select an indicator from the theory of impact tool. So Elaine will go through the indicators, but basically in order to, if we were to have gazillion indicators, like, you know, the way with all different wording, we wouldn't really be able to show anything. So what we have done, and what this was a big part of the work of the advisory group, is standardize a lot of indicators so that they're relevant to you as well, so that you can just pick one. So we've made it, I think, very easy for you guys to be able to fill out this information. So when you get to the outcomes part of the survey itself, as I said, we use your strongest examples. And this is where so it's different from the organisation tab. You've done that. And as I said, once that's done once, it's, you know, anybody can fill in this part. Not that you want it, you know, everybody filling it out, but I think it's handy in, you know, whoever is maybe associated. You might have different people working on different programs, say, for example. So then that way the person working on that program can put in the results that they're most familiar with as well. So briefly describing your activity, it might have been like a workshop that you did, it might have been a residential, etc. So like just briefly describe what you were trying to achieve with that. And if for some reason, so this is where I suppose that the organizational profile and the outcomes intertwine. So when a drop-down menu will come down, and which of your organization's programs is this activity part of? But if it's not there, you also have an option of putting in that. So it might be that the person filling out organizational profiles maybe didn't have that GCE program within there. But just maybe double check with the person who did, so to make sure maybe it's you know, connected with one of the programs they put out. So what in the list, say, would best describe this? So it could be a webinar. So we have a drop-down menu for that. And I think it's quite an exhaustive list of, like, you know, of the types of activities that we do in the GCE community, and describe your activities location. So that's either online or in person, or a hybrid blended learning. So the total duration of the activities in hours. So if you did, maybe it could have been, the example there is really, really good. So you did a 10-hour training course that attended by 80 people, but you just counted as 10. So you did 10 hours with those 80 people, and how many sessions were part of this activity. So it could have been just one, it could have been, you know, a one-off workshop, or it could have been within 3 sessions. So Here at the very end, just the time. So say if you did something really big, a big activity in this month, May, and you just put in kind of the same start and the same end date because it happened within in that month. If that's okay. And then the same would go, say, for a one-off workshop, etc. Great. So, sorry. So how many participants took part in this activity in total? And then which sectors were they from, were represented? So it would be fairly straightforward, say, if you're working in one particular sector, you'd be able to just say, okay, they were all from the formal education sector, and that's it. But you might have, like, particularly I think with community and adults, you might have them coming from all different kind of sectors. Or if you're doing something maybe in the informal education space as well, there might be a variety of different sectors that are represented at your activities. And then this is where I guess, like, if you did collect demographic information like age, gender, location, etc., from your participants, you put in yes or no, and that's, it will lead you then into this screen where you can, like, put in your information. And if you say no, obviously it takes you straight to our indicators. So I will pass back over to Elaine briefly. And as I said, just to remind you as well, this is very much an open space.
Hmm.
No question is stupid because, like, we've been totally embedded in this process for the last 4 or 5 months. So there's probably things that, like, we're missing that you want to express. So please feel free to unmute
Hmm.
or put in the chat your questions. Thanks, Elaine.
No worries. Thanks, Lizzie. I was going to say the same thing, like we can pause for a minute or two, because I know
Mhm.
there was a lot of information there in terms of outcomes and activities, and that is really the bulk of the data you need, I suppose. So if there are questions, feel free. One thing I would say as well, like we sort of like we went back and forth so many times over the questions. The advisory group were brilliant. Rudy was brilliant in trying to make sure we were getting the best info. And even things like the duration of the activity, like we felt that was really important to understand the depth of the activity as well. So if somebody has a one-off intervention and it's a full day, or if it's an hour. Like there's a big difference in that in terms of the GCE experience that the learner or the participant will have. At the same time, for the organizational category, we needed to be able to capture things like meetings with political actors or meetings with, like-minded organizations or movements. So we really we tested it so many different ways. I'm sure there's still things that we can refine and improve, so it's never perfect, but hopefully it's good enough. And it won't feel overwhelming once you've seen it a couple of times and you've had a chance to go through it yourselves. Don't think there are any questions, so I can keep going, but like don't hesitate to pop your hand up or put the question into the chat. So the indicators, then this is a really important part of the tool. Because as Lizzie said, if everybody is reporting on their activities with different indicators, we won't actually be able to collate very much at all. So we've had a go, and the advisory group again was instrumental in this, and so were the IDEA staff in formulating indicators for each of the 14 intermediate outcomes that we have. And we're basically asking you to choose the indicator that's best aligned to your indicator that you're tracking. So sometimes there's a lot of confusion around indicators, and I put that in just as a kind of reminder to us all. It's really important that we get the indicator right because that's how we will analyze across the sector. If you're doing your activities, you're describing your programs in a way that you describe them within your organization and it's slightly different to how I describe them in my organization, that's fine. The indicators is the crucial part. So basically, an indicator is something that just indicates whether or not we're making progress towards our intended outcome. So, Susan Galway, who a lot of you will know, has developed this results framework toolkit. She was a predecessor of Lizzie and I in IDEA. And she sets out really clearly, I suppose, how to craft and develop indicators. So all of the learning, I suppose, that we have really comes from Susan's work and, the quality and impact working group in IDEA over many years in terms of how to craft an indicator. And the the example that she always uses is that if your child is unwell or somebody that you're caring for at home is unwell, not feeling great, not eating, maybe not sleeping well or sleeping too much, one of the first things you'll probably check is their temperature, because that's an indicator of their overall health. It won't tell you exactly what's wrong with them. It won't tell you what to do, but it will give you some sort of evidence towards, whether or not you need to take them to the doctor. So I just think it's really important that we always make sure that our indicator is helping us to identify any progress that we're making towards our intended outcome. In the RF toolkit, which I've linked there, there's lots of information on how to develop them. Not that we want you all to go off and develop other indicators, because we do have a ready-made list, but if you're trying to understand the thinking behind them or you want to articulate them for yourself, you're absolutely welcome to do that and to look at that resource, and we have a training recorded on the website on it as well. So basically, as we said, we're aiming to use common indicators as much as possible. And that means that most of us are going to have to compromise to some extent on the language within the indicators. So in the indicators, for instance, we always use the word educator. We don't use the word teacher. We don't use the word lecturer. We don't use the word youth worker, because straight away we would end up with 3 different indicators if we were that specific. So you basically need to find the indicators that align best with the language that you're using. They probably won't be a direct match, but the ones that you can align your work to or align your indicators to. At the same time, if you're really struggling to create indicators, this might be a great resource to have, because then actually you can look through some of the indicators that we're using for the theory of impact tool, and you can kind of, adopt them into your own work as well. We'd be delighted if people find them that helpful and can use them in that way. So when you go through the outcomes, focusing on really that data that Lizzie went through for the activities, then you need to select an indicator that shows how you're measuring your outcome. And sorry, Lizzie, just go back a second. Basically, there's three options when you do that. Sorry, there's 2 options. One is to select one, and we're going to go through those now. If you really feel strongly that your indicator is clearer, better, more aligned to the outcome, and you want to suggest your own, you can. And what happens, we're actually going to review them internally in IDEA to see, okay, are these useful for the theory of impact overall, or is it really just for this one specific organization? We'll probably suggest aligning it with an alternative that we have already within the tool. Or if we think, wow, this person has really cracked it, this indicator is much better than ones that we've created, or it plugs a gap maybe that we didn't realize that, that was within the theory, we'll accept it and add it to this bank of indicators that everybody can view. And we'll show you those now. So on the supporting information within the theory of impact tool, you'll have the full list of indicators, so you can also look at them before you decide which one you're going to go with. As I said, there's kind of 2 or 3 indicators for each of the intermediate outcomes. And here there's examples here. So here it's showing you the outcomes. So there's 2 outcomes there. One is around critical reflection on positionality, and one is around materials. And then there's indicators within that. Okay. So for instance, you get them when you click into that, you get the full text of the full intermediate outcome. So the critical reflection on positionality is kind of the headline. You'll get the full text of the intermediate outcome, and then you'll get the associated indicator. So this is evidence of educators recognizing their privilege and complicity in global justice issues. So it gives you a lot of scope then to describe the results, I would say. Like, the indicators are, I think, general enough to cover a lot of different activities, but also specific enough to show progress towards the specific outcome, which is really important as well. And there is a mix of quantitative and qualitative indicators in the tool itself. So this obviously is a qualitative one. It's asking you for evidence of something, but then there are ones like number of, percentage of, and so on. These are the ones within organizations. So that 3rd category of the theory of impact model. So it's just showing you four of your outcomes there. You can select the outcome that you want to align your activity to, and then you can select the indicator within that. And you'll see at the same time, there's always that option at the bottom. Do you want to add your own indicator? And then that will go through kind of a bit of a brief review for myself and Lizzie to see, okay, do we need to add this to the tool, or can it be replaced by another indicator that people are already using? Okay. And then if you're adding your own indicator, this is what will pop up. It will ask you to select a category, the intermediate outcome that aligns to the category being educator, learner, or organization, those three pillars of the pyramid of the theory of impact model. And then the intermediate outcomes will pop up within that. So even if you're selecting, if you're, sorry, adding your own indicator, you'll have to align it to one of the intermediate outcomes. Okay. And there, for instance, there's an example there of an intermediate outcome under the category of organizations. So the intermediate outcome is that GCE in Ireland and Europe receive stronger and more secure funding, policy support, and institutional backing. And then there's two associated indicators there. One is the level of funding received for GCE per donor, and one is evidence of GCE messages promoted by your organization are reflected in policies, institutional discourse, and/or media. Okay. So I'll just pause there again for a second. We're, conscious that there's a lot of information. Hopefully, most of you are familiar with indicators. If you're using results frameworks, you'll be drafting indicators annually, probably, or refining them. But if there are any questions, feel free. Yeah. Katrina, do you want to feel free
Hi,
to come off?
Elaine.
Yeah.
Thanks a million. Just wondering if will you show us the list of indicators on this call, like the full list of indicators, or is that something that we can check after the call?
Yeah, we can show
Okay.
during actually we're going to go live, like, after this as well, just when we go through kind of some of the tools. And in
Oh,
your
amazing.
in your supporting information, there's the whole list of indicators. So you can go into a specific supporting information section that will show you all the indicators as well. So yeah,
Brilliant.
it's a like, I guess, if you are, like, I would advise people to go there first when they go into before they do the survey as well. So you can kind of
Mhm.
go, okay, this is what you familiarize yourself, particularly I think with the indicators. Yeah.
Thanks, Lizzie.
Great. Over to you, Lizzie, then.
Okay. So now on to the kind of the other information required for the survey. So we're just going to go, the things that you would need would be like the type of tools that you use. So like whether you're using surveys or the types of evaluation tools that you're using. You may have gathered a lot of participant quotes, say either by survey, by using one of these mechanisms, or it might be like, follow-up emails. We call it anecdotal evidence here in IDEA, which has been really, really useful, where you really chip away with, what people have said in the follow-up, maybe after your activities. So data collection methods, and also, I suppose, to have at hand as well the different web links to the resources or the materials, or you might have, even if it's like, social media links that, like, to that particular activity that might have like photos, that might have videos, etc., and any other relevant information. I guess with this as well, we, in order to, a lot of tools, I guess, and like, results collection would reflect quantitative data. But what we really want to show is, and it does have the ability to show, is that qualitative stuff, like, those photos, those, like, I suppose, personal participant quotes, etc. And to be able to gather that, I think, is really, really important from this. So I guess just following on from our indicators. So you'll be brought to a page around, like, well, what tools did you use to track this? Describe, I guess, the results. Like, it could be that actually we were oversubscribed, everybody, it's, I suppose, anecdotal, like on what, like, we had 50 people there. They really enjoyed it, like, and then we could go on then to, like, I suppose it may be, and I suppose this is one thing about the indicator. So say if you were working with learners, obviously in a lot of workshops or activities, you want to hit their head, their hearts, and their hands. So it might be that under, like, say, heart or head, you would want like, the way for them to kind of maybe understand their privilege. But then you also kind of want them maybe to take some meaningful action as a result of that as well as an indicator. So the indicators then under the hands might kind of come in there. So then you can add, I guess, that a number of indicators as well, because I know that people will be, and the same with the organization and the same with educators as well. There's a number of indicators in which you're hitting. So again, it's just a drop down menu and you can add in your indicators. For this, I suppose to let you know, so you'll probably have numerous participant quotes. So you put in one, you press enter, you put in another, press enter, etc. So, and hopefully you have a good, so really we would say, again, it's back to your best of and your greatest hits. Put in your best participant quotes that you can here, and the ones that really, that you probably use in your annual report anyway, or use as evidence yourself within your own systems. If there's anything else about that impact of the activity that previous questions didn't capture. So this is more kind of a loose, place, like it might be your own kind of, your organization's own kind of reflection maybe on how the activity went. This is a good kind of opportunity to put it in there. So your own kind of self-evaluation of how the activity went would be a good place for this. So again, links now it could be a link on your website, it could be a link, as I said, on social media, to that specific activity, or to the specific program that it's related to as well. That's where you might find that. And then what best describes the materials you're sharing. It could be it could be a report on it, or it could be a video or a podcast, a case study, etc. And we really feel that giving this variety, I suppose, of different ways in which we show the impact will make a really, really rich vision when all the data is collected. Well, it will never be all collected, but within a year, I think we will have sufficient data in which we can really, really see the vision that we have for GCE under the theory of impact. Okay, so I'm going to start with supporting info. So again, this is kind of like your landing page after you log in. And because there was a specific question, I guess, about the indicators as well, we will go in and have a look. So as we saw earlier on, that's the model itself. Let me see, we'll go back. And so the indicators. So we'll get to see them all here. So if you can see there, so say let's look at, if anybody wants to shout out which they'd like to see, maybe if we do a shout out, who would like to see learners? Maybe we'd go do learners. Okay, so if you see here under, say, head, level of increased understanding of global justice issues. So that might be and you can see them all in one fell swoop as well. But again, just on the section around kind of other indicators. So if you're, say, working with learners and you're doing we'll just say a workshop for argument's sake, and you really would like to see a good level of increased understanding of global justice issues. However, you'd really like to see that there's kind of evidence of learners maybe recognizing their privilege as well and complicity in global justice issues. And you may want to see that the percentage of learners that intend to take action as a result of the activities. So I think before you kind of even approach the survey, maybe this is an important section to look into, to kind of go, okay, well, I'm going to put in my example around learners. So what indicators do you think I was trying to hit as well? And it might take a while if you don't have the way maybe set indicators as of yet. And as Elaine said, if this helps as well, maybe with your own kind of monitoring and evaluation, please feel free to use these as well. But this, again, is work in progress. So, it could be a case that we might get loads of indicators after this. So I'm just going to go back. So outcomes equally. So you can see all kind of the 14 outcomes here as well. Educators use tools to identify and challenge systems that support inequality, etc. So we have everything, all the interim outcomes within there as well. So as I said, worth having a look just before you fill in the survey. So I think we've gone through most of like what we see. I'll go like, the way just again, that's how it starts off. You're in there, you're next, et cetera, et cetera. And we went through that through different screenshots. But what I'm going to show you now is again, just and Rudy showed you earlier on. This is great because it shows you kind of at each section what is going to happen. So I might ask you, I'll ask those who are brave to unmute, maybe what they would like to investigate. Yeah. So this just shows you all, like, this line shows where you are and to start at. And this is really, I think this is my favorite tab where you explore and you can see like, what it looks like on the map of Ireland. And you can see the participants' quotes here. You can see like the total participants that took part. So as I said, all this data, again, thank you, advisory group. You can see like some of their activities so far. They've put in some really, really good quality information. So I'm going to ask you now, just so we can have a little test, so see here, you can change what you want to basically look at. So I'll ask you now, maybe, give us a sector shout out there for maybe what sector you'd like to maybe investigate. So then you can go by the sector that you're working in, say, and then maybe you don't want to see total hours. So most of the data that we have is like, we're basing it on kind of total hours. So really the amount of hours that you've put into it, but you can also see, we should be able to see there the participants. So the total participants that are there as well. So let's have a look. So as I said, this is like, based on the information we do have. So over time, like this map will be completely full. And then when you click onto like so Donegal is very active, I must say. So a shout out to the Inishowen development for that. So the Inishowen development partners, you can zone in right on what they're doing at the adult sector, and then you can discover, oh, actually that's the impact that they've had. They did a 6-week accredited course, and their long-term partners were like, so it was a collective community thing. And then the participant quote is, the world is better off than I think, which is quite a nice outcome from that as well. So you can search really basically under any sector, or if we say as a sector ourselves just really wanted to see the overall impact, we can do that as well. So say if we are to look at total participants so far, so even with our small advisory group, we're looking at 1,273 people. Let us see, from learners, we can see here that they mostly came from educators, and it was influenced, say, underneath the interim outcomes. So say if we go into quality materials, we'll see that like DICE, so each stage you can click into to kind of mine down like more information into what that meant. So they had a stand at the National Education, and then they had another national education show that they sent these materials to. Let's see, Global Village, and they had a teacher training course, and it influenced that amount of people as well. So within the educators, yeah. Have you any questions about that? Because it is like, as I said, our head has been in this for a couple of months. So there might be, things so I'd love to maybe hear if you think it's workable, or if there's any questions on how we use it. So again, we can explore then in here, then what exactly the detail was. So you're like, well, what did Global Village actually do in order to get this result? Right. So that is like, I guess, the 3 sectors. So I guess if we're looking at it, we go kind of bottom up, supporting info, like, okay, I got it. Fill out your survey. You'll see basically what you've put into your survey immediately. So you can also, when you're in the impact, if you just want to see your own stuff, you can also just see your own stuff. So let me just see. Does anybody want to shout out their own organization that we can see? Those who are on the advisory group, of course. So you'll see there that there's like, so as time goes on, we will have all of the IDEA members within in that section. Right. All good.
Thanks, Lizzie. Yeah. And once you input data into it as well, I suppose once you all IDEA members will be able to see everyone else's data as well. Like, and I think that will be a great source of inspiration and information, to understand members' work. You'll see in the tool, in the survey, we gather web links to resources that will tell you more about the activity. So it really should be a great source of inspiration as well as, I suppose, gathering the results. I think what's going, we didn't put up the timeline yet for the pilot. I actually forgot to do it during the launch, but we can I might just show that briefly now, Lizzie,
Yeah,
but it's way
no
back up
problem.
before the training started. I
Yeah.
think it's like slide 22.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Perfect.
basically, I might just explain briefly now how the pilot will work, and then I'll just let you know kind of, I suppose, the our key messages before we sign off. So basically, we, as you can see, like anyone who's doing the code of good practice and the theory of impact, like the theory of impact, we imagine is going to be a lot less work because it is really focusing on the greatest hits, as we're calling them. And when we consulted the kind of time frame for the pilot with the advisory group, everyone seemed to agree that you could do it within kind of 2 to 3 months, that you could gather the information that you need and input it into the tool because you're only focusing on a smaller number of activities. And they felt that that was doable. Um, we will be accompanying members. So anyone who signs up to the pilot after today, some of you have already signed up, as Lizzie said, you'll get your login details. And then we're going to organize like a number of check-in points kind of along the way with that group online just to see how people are doing. Any issues with the tool, we're sure there's things that we'll need to change or tweak or reword because they're not clear, like that's inevitable. And we'll have those check-in points over the kind of, it's 2.5 months really up till the end of July. Then in August, we're going to be analysing the pilot data. So there's a few phases to that, one of which is obviously Rudy's work with analysing the data. And I imagine, and again, it would be great, we'll verify this with him, but we haven't finalised, I suppose, the work fully with him for this stage. But I imagine we'll be taking the indicators and the data under indicators for each of the outcomes and kind of summarising what the results are across the sector under that. I imagine at that stage it'd be really useful to get feedback from the members as well on what those trends are and what the analysis is telling us. Maybe they'll, question some of the analysis. Maybe they'll kind of, help us to illustrate it with more detail. And then, as I said, there'll be kind of, I think, a wider kind of research piece. And we'll have to agree then, we haven't done this yet, we have to agree how then to insert that kind of collective snapshot of the impact that we're having after the pilot, incorporate that so you can also view it then on the tool itself. Because at the moment, the Sankey diagram, it's really flowing from the intermediate outcomes down, but we will need to bring in those bigger levels then of the long-term outcome for each category, educators, learners, and organizations, and then the vision, the collective vision that we have as well. So we're working on that in the background, I suppose, and taking Rudy's advice on that as well. And as members then are using it, and as we see what comes out of the process, hopefully, I suppose that will help us to further, define exactly the analysis and how we're going to present that. But we will be presenting it before the end of the year. Like I'd say, we're hoping to present it in October or November, possibly earlier. It all really depends also on the quality of the data that we get. So we're really keen, I suppose, to have a close relationship with any organization that's piloting to make sure that, people take the time to do it, even though, I'm saying it can be quick-ish, But I suppose to make sure you have the right information to hand, to make sure you fully understand the questions. We went back and forth rewording things so many times based on feedback from IDEA staff and the advisory group. And I'm sure they're still not crystal clear for everyone, So just to make sure you do understand the questions and things like that. So again, the data is really, really high quality. So that's kind of the view to piloting. The next steps then are one, I suppose, just a few reminders, like to make sure that you're only including activities that have a really, really strong result. So, as we said, the code of good practice is about your practice holistically. The theory of impact is about what difference you're making. And if you don't have evidence to show you're making difference under specific outcomes, you don't include them. You choose the outcomes where you're showing the biggest difference. Because we know we have 14 intermediate outcomes. Not members are expected really, I would say, just to focus on 2 or 3 of those. And that's kind of off the top of my head, but I don't think you need to input data for more of those, because if we have 20 or 30 members piloting it, all of the intermediate outcomes will be covered. And again, covered with really high quality information. Make sure that you can map, your activity onto an intermediate outcome and to an indicator. As Lizzie said, like look at those documents in advance, under supporting documents, to make sure the data that you're inputting will link to an indicator and an outcome. That's really important. And then, as we said, like add things like quotes, the web links to resources or materials, like really bring it to life. Also, so other people can learn from it as well. Finally, then let me see. I thought there was one other thing. We had a deadline, didn't we, for Lizzie, for people to come back to us by, yes, there you are. Thank you. 27th of May. So basically a week from tomorrow. A lot of people have already signed up to the pilot, but if you're still thinking about it, if you want to go off and discuss it with your colleagues, we'll share the slides from today and the recording as soon as we can, hopefully in the next day or two. Again, if you want to kind of mull it over a bit, or you want to, bring it to your manager or whatever to get, backing to be involved in the pilot. So you have until tomorrow week, Wednesday, the 27th of May. You will get a login to log in at that stage, and there'll be a group email kind of explaining some of the processes. We will have group support or those kind of check-ins we mentioned, but also at any time. I think anyone who's been a member of IDEA for a long time will know that at any stage, pick up the phone or drop an email to any IDEA member of staff on any issue in general. But for this specifically, if you have a question on something, if you're struggling, like please let myself and Lizzie know as soon as possible, because that quality information is really what will create, I suppose, a quality picture of the collective impact we have in GCE.